lighting is not very good, so you can't see it properly. But it's the new issue of 4020 magazine, which is out now.
I think it's known as product placement.
Yeah, we're allowed to do that because it's the internet. And you can do whatever you want on the internet until someone calls you out on it. Welcome to 4020 TV. Rugby's back. How happy you feel that rugby's back? Because I watched it yesterday. It was exciting. And South Sydney were rubbish, and then they were good, but they still lost to Melbourne Storm, who I don't like their new shirts. Look too much like Leeds away. But Melbourne Storm, they're going to win the NRL, so they may as well close it off now. Everyone, after a half an hour, was saying it's a good job they're not playing Saints, which they're not. So we should send them over one of the World Club Challenge shields. That'll be somewhere in a box under Robert Elston's desk, or previous desk.
What happened to Robert Elston?
I don't know.
Robert Elston's name rings a bell.
This time last week, he left. I thought he was staying a bit longer, but he's gone now.
Gone.
I mean, I don't want to be one of these rugby league media outlets that just talks about people in fancy suits and stuff. But what else is there to talk about?
Well, we could talk about Cameron Smith.
He's retired. Why did he retire the day before the season started? I didn't understand that. I'm assuming he retired months ago and they've just delayed it until now for some reason.
From what I can gather, he's a pretty much understated guy, and for whatever people's thoughts of him, and there is a debate to be had as is he the greatest player of the modern era? My vote says yes. But he has always lived his life sort of in, but wanting to be slightly out of the spotlight. He hasn't craved. People are going to say, yeah, he wanted to be a referee. And he was always talking to the man in the middle. But outside of the game, he wasn't one of these people that you knew anything much about his private life. You didn't know a lot about he wasn't destined for a media career. Sonny Bill Williams retires on the same day, immediately unveiled by Channel 9 as being one of their pundits. I think with Cameron Smith, there were still overtures from people like the Gold Coast Titans and then Brisbane Broncos to say, if you want to come home and do a final lap of honour and year at a different club and be the old head around which we can start building successful teams, that may have appealed to him, and I think he's finally decided that it probably doesn't. But he will be happy to ride off into the sunset, and so we wait until his statue was unveiled outside Amy Park with Billy Slater's, and just wandered up and said, oh, by the way, I know the season starts tomorrow, but I won't be part of it. And that's just the way he is. But the debate about is he the greatest of the modern era, I think one thing it does show is that because the rules of the game have changed over the last 25 years, hooker is the most important position on the field. And to play one of the very few Australian players to play over 500 games, that is phenomenal in itself. Wasn't injured for 6 consecutive years. Again, just ridiculous. 56 Australian caps, including captaining them to 2 World Cups. That ranks him among any immortal under any criteria you want to put out there. I just think he did more things at more crucial times in more games than anybody that I've seen. Wally Lewis did it when he first burst onto the scene, and you'd think, oh, it's getting to that time in a game where it just needs somebody to do something that's going to determine it for their team, and Wally was just unquestionably brilliant at doing that. And Cameron Smith took on that mantle, and we moved away from halves being the most important to hookers had their hands on the ball. You add in his goal kicking, which is a record goal kicker, and the ones he's kicked from touch, the ones he's kicked under pressure in grand finals, the drop goals he's done in major matches. I just think he had it all, and he didn't have a personality. So so what? He was the craft. He embodied the craft better than anybody I have seen in the modern era.
Personality is overrated because usually the people they promote as personalities haven't got them. He didn't score as many tries as James Roby though, so
again,
behind Roby.
But I suspect he may have done if he'd ever played in the Super League, and there'd been a bit more space for him to work in. But he was just absolutely magnificent at bringing the best out of those around him, and his option taking at crucial time. The difference between a team that wins and one that doesn't often is who in that moment when it's determined will make the right decision, and invariably it was him in that Melbourne shirt, the swine.
They should retire the number 9 and make whoever the next hooker is at Melbourne full time, wearing 99, in the way that when Wayne Gretzky was coming through as a junior in ice hockey, he couldn't wear 9 because Gordie Howe had it, I think. So he had to wear 99 and then made that into a legendary number. So they could do, like Todd Canny was going to wear it at Salford until someone discovered the rules. You can't do that. Apart from clubs who've got number 18 as their fans, why is that allowed? Because 8 is crap. and that's it. There isn't a B. It's just crap. Speaking of referees, who wants to be a referee? It says here in the official Rugby League Annual 1994. Not Cameron Smith apparently, but we'll talk more about refereeing later. There's a great picture here of a referee, and there's Scully just stood there having his 2 pence worth. He stood in the scrum. There he is.
Yeah. He's just saying, by the way, you got that one wrong.
I don't know if this is the same one which has got Gary Schofield's tackling tips in, which obviously causes much consternation in the past.
Presumably half a paragraph, if it was.
There he is scoring a try, famous tries. There's Eddie and Steve-O. Steve-O with hair. Eddie with the same hair colour. And all that jazz. Yeah, anyway, more on that later. So the NRL's back. I listened this morning to the end of Brisbane versus the Parramatta Eels, where Brisbane threw away a 16-0 lead. So already I've listened and watched more NRL than I usually do.
I do like the ABC coverage. I don't know which station you listen to. But
it was ABC. Because I joined late, I don't know who was on there, but someone sounded like Andrew Henderson, who was very excited.
Yeah, ABC Grandstand is a great listen if you don't get the chance to get the pictures on Sky. And the mitigation is Brisbane didn't have a bench apparently, so
everyone was injured, weren't they?
Ran out of steam. But I just think what was great watching the Melbourne game, aside from the quality for round 1, I just think even if we're a little bit introspective on our own composition, you have to say clearly there were mistakes. There always are in round 1, but to serve up a match of that quality in round 1. Was astonishing, but it was just seeing and hearing a crowd.
Yeah,
I think we'd forgot. You get so attuned to this artificial noise, the nonsense, and we've had the cardboard figures and everything. But to actually watch a game when a crowd is getting more and more animated because the action is eliciting a response, that was the joy for me. Not necessarily who won or who played well, and thank goodness Thomas Burgess isn't injured. He's fine. He could well play in round 2. Great game on the field, but wasn't it wonderful to see the camera pan round and families together? And when tries were scored, you had animated people jumping up and down behind them and taking pictures on their mobile rather than watching the game, which we all love to do these days. And hopefully we'll get back to something like that. We've got the friendlies now, with more meaningful games as we approach the start of the season. The women's game is back. We've got dates for all of that and a structure now. 18th of April we'll be watching women's matches. The community game has got the proverbial roadmap that everybody has to have now. It should be really the sat nav, because nobody uses a roadmap anymore. But 29th of March, phased return, a month's worth of training, and then hopefully games at the end of April. It's touch wood that there are reservations about how many people are getting the vaccination, even though the process is rolling out, how quickly, how is that going to translate into allowing people into a ground. Really interesting to see the whole KR news yesterday that they're building a new temporary stand at the south stand side of the ground, which initially is not to get more people in there, it's to space them out more so that they can get the maximum amount that will be allowed. And then if everything goes to plan and they get their local derby game with Hull later in the season, the capacity would actually go up overall. All of that is, I just think if we can focus on that and not anything other than what's going on the field, then brilliant. And I think there is a point by saying yet again the headlines that are being grabbed 2 weeks out are by administrators, and the sooner we get away from that and turn it into players, the better. Or even referees. I think we're going to speak to one soon, but I think James Child has done a fantastic job in just the rationale behind who he is as a person. I think he shows us that referees are to be respected as human beings, and I think the guests we've got on today will further that.
I don't know if the listeners or viewers heard my dog there squeal when you mentioned James Charles. She's not an anti-referee person. It's just the wind. Honest. Yes, we've got a referee coming on in a bit. I'm trying to think of all the other bits I wanted to mention. We don't really need to speak about Sonny Bill Williams because he's retired, but his return to rugby league we covered in depth at the time, and his departure. And well, we know what happened with Toronto. We don't really need to say anything else about Sonny Bill Williams. But
the only thing about
an iconic sports person.
Well, the only thing I would say about him is that I can't think of anybody else in the world of professional sport who has excelled in 3 different sports.
Not in this era, no.
Whether you're a fan of the teams he's played for, you cannot argue with the impact he had in rugby union, his World Cup winner, the fact that at his absolute peak in rugby league he was untouchable. But the first encounter I really saw close up was the 2005 World Club Challenge when he came over to Ellen Road and played for Canterbury, and we'd not seen a player like him. He's just for his size, what an athlete. And he put a couple of hits on that day when shoulder charge were allowed. It just made you shudder. But he could handle the ball, and wonderful. And I'm told his boxing career again is not one of these. I got in a ring and I looked very nice in skimpy shorts and knocked a guy out who shouldn't have been within the same country as me, let alone the same square. He is actually a very good professional boxer, and he's going to continue that, I believe. So to do that in 3 different sports that require totally different skills, we should be holding it. I think we spoke about it a lot at the time, that when he signed for Toronto, that press conference at Arsenal was the biggest thing that's happened to the sport for 2-3 years. The biggest personality we brought in, an occasion that was crammed packed with media that wouldn't normally follow rugby league, and that's because of who he was and not because of anything we'd done. So yeah, a superstar in a different way to Cameron Smith, but a big loss nonetheless. There's nobody on the horizon that looks like they're going to be able to do what he's done.
People won't realise this, but if you watch my face, you don't realise I'm self-editorialising myself, which is a skill which is important for professional broadcasters and semi-professional and amateur and retired broadcasters, which some people need to learn, but apparently they can't. But there you go. One other departure we need to mention, and you've mentioned the Women's Super League coming back, and those opening round fixtures, I tell you what, they could be brutal. They in terms of the results, because the way they've fallen, they could be brutal. Because we know there are some big clubs in the Women's Super League and some not so big clubs, and all the big clubs aren't playing against each other in the first round, which is interesting. But one big departure on the eve of the season is Lindsay Anfield from Castleford. Led them to 3 of the last 4 finals. League Leaders Shield last year, 2019. We just forget 2020 happened. Obviously, you can say, well, they got to those finals, but they didn't win any of them. But they were involved in all of them and competed. She's going to be a massive loss for Cass, who obviously have to replace her on the eve of the season, and obviously part of the England coaching staff. So whenever she does feel like she wants to get back in the game, she will certainly have plenty of offers, you would assume, from around the league.
I think the reaction of all of the players that have been under her on social media tell us everything. That clearly there was almost despair from a lot of the big name cast players, saying how much of an influence she's been on their career, how the side reflected her as a person, how much they were going to miss her. I think that's a massive testament to her. I think she probably will keep the England role leading up to the World Cup.
Yes, yeah.
Which is important, because I think when we spoke to Craig Richards, he'd impressed upon us how important she was to that setup, and so close to the players and understanding of their needs. So I think that England's World Cup chances are enhanced by her staying in that role. Yeah, I mean, it'd be very interesting to see how Castleford appoint at such short notice. It's a blow for Cass, clearly, and I hope that there is somebody who is going to take up that role that will have an instant impact in the same way that she has had. It's a tough act to follow, for sure, and I think those close to the women's game felt that it also came as a shock. I don't think anybody saw that coming.
No, I think I remember her speaking after the Challenge Cup final at Bolton in 2019. I think she was almost not surprised at the level of interest, but the amount of, I don't want to say pressure, it's the wrong word, but the level where Women's Super League is and is expected to be compared to perhaps resource and time and money and everything that goes alongside it. We do almost expect the players and coaches to do a lot for very little, if not anything.
Yeah.
To try and put it that way, we're asking them to act professionally and not recompensing them as such, which I think is an issue, which it's a difficult one to broach. I know the BBC on International Women's Day did plenty of things about the gender pay gap in sport, and it's a difficult one because money has to come in from somewhere to pay for professionalism, and it's where that money comes in. But you would hope that clubs will have seen in the last few years there is something that can be done with women's rugby league, that it can be some kind of spectator product, that it might be able to be monetized in the future. And if you can make money, the players can make money, everyone's happy. I don't know how far down the line that is. I don't know how much money that is. I'm not saying any women's players are going to be getting paid $1,000 a week or whatever, but it's still better than nothing.
I think there is an understanding out there now of the value of women's sport, and that value hasn't yet been commercialised. But I think, hopefully when the season does get back, and maybe towards the end of that season when crowds can get back, I think sponsors and partners will see the advantage of tying in the women's game with the men's game, with the wheelchair game. And that's why, this World Cup and the PDRL one that will run alongside it is so important for the sport. It's not just about the exposure on TV. It's about, we played the inclusive card a lot, and we can go out there and prove it. And, Lindsay needs to be a part of that, and the work that she's done needs to be remembered in some material way down at the jungle, and I'm sure they will. But they've got a big decision to make, and I don't know. Would you think that would upset Castleford's preparations, or because they've got to be one of the favourites this year? And haven't had a huge turnover of personnel, and have played so well over the last couple of seasons that we've been allowed to have. I would think that the pressure is on them now to turn that into silverware, and the person who was tasked with doing that is not going to be part of their setup. So I just wonder how that's going to affect them. There's almost a mirror with the men's team in some ways there, that that's so close but yet so far is now a season whereby the men's team have to deliver as well on something like that. So interesting times down lane.
Pressure. It's for tyres and football. I found the tackling tips with Gary Schofield page. The only picture of Scotty involved in a tackle is him being tackled. That's
because they couldn't find a picture of him ever doing one. Yeah. It can't be more than a paragraph. Surely isn't a page.
He's giving you all these tips: tackling from the side, front on tackle, smother tackle, tackling from behind.
And every single one, it says, get one of the forwards to do it.
Just imagine he's here. Be prepared to listen to your coach and work hard, he says about Dougie Lawson.
Tell the donkeys to get stuck in.
Determination can get you anywhere. Look at me. At 18, I became the youngest tourist to Australia. I don't know why he's Fred Truman.
I'll say that.
My advice, young players wanting to improve their tackling, is never to be afraid. Even when your opponent is much bigger than yourself. Let's run away. Get one of the donkeys to do it.
Never to be afraid of saying to somebody stood in front of you, that's yours.
No. There he is passing the ball on the front as well. This is the official Rugby League Annual 1994. They should bring it back because there's a page here, 2 pages. Who wants to be a referee? You're never too young to start training as a Rugby League referee. It says here. It is a job which is challenging and satisfying at every level. Many ex-players who took up the whistle after playing saw it as the awards and medals as much as the ones they won when playing. He said, I can't think of many players who did retire and became referees, but there you go. The world can quickly become...
Mr. Bloom is the only one I can
think of. The world can quickly become the young ref's oyster, it says here. So there you go. You could become a referee. Of course, many people start their refereeing careers in their 20s or even later. All referees are thoroughly tested on a regular basis to maintain their grades These tests include running 8 kilometres in 37 minutes. If only I'd read this before we interviewed our next guest, and I could have asked him if that's still the same now. Because our guest this week is top Rugby League match official, Liam Moore. Liam, thanks for joining us. We've been asking coaches and players for the last few months, how ready are you for the new season? How has pre-season gone for you and the rest of the match officials?
It's been different, to be honest. It's been different to what a normal season would look like. So the full-time referees, we've all been training from home. So it's been a pre-season starting back end of December, early January. So it's been a long pre-season, just like many players will tell you as well. Different in the sense that we've not been able to train together, but we've been doing a lot of Zoom meetings, team meetings, going through policy, the new law changes, which I'm sure we'll touch on. In terms of club visits, we've still done club visits. So I think every Super League team now have had a club visit either by teams or in person. So I think I've done Saints, Wigan, Salford, and an online one with Toulouse. So that's been good that we've still been able to have that contact, actually getting into clubs and educating them and them educating us in some ways. So it's been different, but I think we've had to adapt. You know, as referees, as players, you just the situation we're in at the moment, we've had to adapt, and I think everybody's just ready to get back on the field now and get going again.
New laws, as you say, are coming in for this year. How long does it take you to get your head around them and ready to get them in play, as you say, when we get underway?
Yeah, it's a while. It's a change, certainly on some of them. So last year, obviously, we had the scrums, didn't we? The removal of scrums, which felt strange in removing them from a game. Similar again this year. I think most people are used to the 6 again now that we brought in after lockdown. But in terms of the changes, you'll see the ball steal ruling will be slightly different this year. In terms of the actual lateral option, I think people will see a change in that, in where teams can actually pick where they want to play. But in terms of us, it's just been literally almost going through clips, working out how our process is going to be, potential issues that we could find further down the line. But for us, we've been doing our work, but I know from being in the clubs have been doing their work as well. So, like I said, come round one, we'll see how it goes. But I'm sure it'll make the game faster and even more flowing.
We talk about making the game faster and free-flowing and a better spectacle, and we focus a lot on how that affects the players and it changes positions and how influential they are and aerobic capacity and means that forwards have got to play. Nobody ever says how it affects the referee. I mean, I know you're all full-time and incredibly fit anyway, but surely you've got to do a lot more now to accommodate these new rules. And were you ever asked if you felt they were a good idea?
It's a good question. We wasn't asked if we thought it was a good idea, but on that point, I did the last game before lockdown, the Cass and Saints, before the game was suspended, and I worked out the last game of lockdown and the first game since the new rule changes had come in round one. I think I did Hull and Salford with the 6 again and the change in the game, and I worked out that I did around 2k more in the game after the restart than I did before, which over 80 minutes, it is significant, really, when you're sprinting and changing speed. So even for us, like you said, Phil, I think people probably don't realise sometimes that we have to keep up with your Regan Graces, your real flyers who can. We've got to stay with them. So for us, we've had to change our training slightly. So we've done a lot of short, certainly this off-season, we've done a lot of short shuttle work in sprinting. So I think it's a good point, and what a lot of people maybe don't realise, but certainly with the 6 again, it's definitely quicker. I'm sure the players will vouch for that as well.
And the other thing about it is you've got to make split-second decisions whilst doing all that extra work as well. And I think we've seen with some of the interviews that James Child has done, and that there needs to be more tolerance of just what a referee has to do from perhaps 2 angles. One is appreciating more what you're doing and being sensitive to that. And the other thing is encouraging other people then to come into your profession, which I know is something that you're very keen on. And we have to have a different view of the people in the middle, don't we?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I think there's been quite a bit celebrated the last few months. And, I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't make mistakes, because I do. Like the speed that the game's at the moment, there is going to be errors in games. I don't think anybody will deny that. And I think there's an appreciation there will be errors. Just another point on that as well is that there's nobody more disappointed than me if I make a mistake and it decides the outcome of a game, or it's a critical error in a game. That there's no one more disappointed. We don't work to make mistakes, but the speed of the game now, you will never go for 80 minutes without making some kind of error. We all try. We all, that's the aim, to be perfect, but no player's perfect. So that's the comparison I'd use. And in recruiting referees, I think everyone has a job within the sport, in my opinion, to try and almost kind of put refereeing out there, because it is an important role, and it's maybe not the most popular job in the world. I'll admit to that, but we have an important role to play, and it's the old cliche of without referees, that there really is no game.
The only perfect people, of course, are the ones in the stands who know everything, whether that's media or supporters. We never make mistakes, never ever make mistakes. Abuse is a topic, whether it's referees, players, coaches, and people in the stands. How personally do you cope with it? Because obviously before lockdown, you make a decision, right or wrong, and generally it's right. You're going to get abuse from half the crowd. How do you deal with that on a weekly basis?
I think it was different without the crowds. That's probably not a different question. It was certainly different without that. Personally, my view was that I missed the crowds because it was the atmosphere inside. I know you two both would have been at games as well yourselves, and it just didn't feel quite the same without fans there. In terms of the abuse, honestly, especially on a big game, you hear noise, but when there's that many people in the ground on a massive game, you don't really hear the individual comments. You just hear the roars. In terms of away from that and social media, that kind of thing, you see it, but it's how I just got to have the opinion you're never going to please everybody. The only difference on that, I would say, I don't mind criticism. I'm a referee, and part of the job is that there's going to be criticism. It's very much a decision-making business. I'm conscious of that, but there is a fine line between what is criticism and what is abuse. And 99% of rugby league fans are fantastic, and I have no issue with whatsoever. But when it steps that line into some of the examples we've seen, it's direct abuse. That's for me when it crosses the line.
We've had the incident in football where a referee got physically involved with a player, and the judgments come out, and what the player said to the referee. There were two words in there beginning with the letter C. One's an offensive word I'm not going to say, and the other is cheat. And I guess for a referee, as you say, you make those decisions in a split second. You can't get everything right, but to be accused of a cheat must be the worst thing that can possibly happen to a match official.
Yeah, 100%. That would be the worst. The worst thing somebody could say, because it's insulting your integrity. The reasons you do it for the game as well. The reasons you start. Something that probably goes amiss is that we all love the game. No one would go out in the middle if we didn't actually enjoy doing what we do, and we enjoy refereeing, enjoy that adrenaline rush. So to be called a cheat and you not being fair would be the biggest insult in my view.
You had a phenomenal year last year personally. Possibly might even be a breakthrough year. What did you put that down to? What did you do differently, or what made you unquestionably the leading official that we've got at the moment?
I think there's a few things. I have a comparison to. I came into the full-time group quite young, so I was 21 when I did my first Super League game as a referee, so which is young, and I compare that to maybe a young halfback in Super League now. You come in, it takes a bit of time, especially for as a player. I suppose you've got 12 other blokes around you who can support you as a referee. You're very much on your own in the middle with some pretty experienced pros. So I think it was a process really for me of just development, getting experience, some internationals, some being involved in cup finals, whether that be as a touch judge, gaining that experience. And last year it kind of just, that experience kind of came together. Started the season well, more exposure on TV, and getting that experience with some big clubs and some big games, and really confidence. Confidence is a big one. Once you see, like as a player, the team's going, once you're refereeing well, it's a lot easier going out there just making decisions. So to get the honour of having the run to the quarter-final, the cup, the semi-final, and to the final was the reason we all do it. When we all start on the on the games in NCL, and your mum and dad are taking you when you're only 18 and you can't drive, all them, it makes it worth it to walk out at Wembley. So into your question, it's probably a number of things, but it's a case of now building on from that as well.
You mentioned exposure on TV as well, and I think this is another fascinating area that perhaps we as fans don't appreciate as much. But in our latest magazine, which I'm contractually obliged to promote every time we come on air and there's a new one out, we've got I think a lovely feature with two of your contemporaries, Robert Hicks and Ben Thaler, talking about the influence of Billy Thompson. And one of the things that clearly comes over in that is that Billy was a communicator. He was a players referee. And one of the things that brought him to prominence was rapport. And having an eminent feel for not only what the players needed and wanted, but what spectators wanted to see as well. And Robert was saying how hard that is for you as a modern generation, because you're all wired up, because you've got 57 replays of the same event. And there are certain things you now can't or wouldn't say to a player, even if you had the breath to do it with the speed that you're running at. How difficult is it to maintain a relationship with modern day players, because you want them to appreciate the job that you're trying to do, but also not be seen to be frivolous or too familiar or overly friendly with somebody? I can't imagine how you strike that balance.
Yeah, it's a very fine balance, to be honest. And each referee has their own style, I'd say. No referee is exactly the same in how they manage a game. My background came from, I played when I started off. My brother was a semi-professional player, so my style was trying to be approachable to players and knowing that they could talk to me. That's difficult when you're on Sky and you're mic'd up and they can hear every word you say. So you have to manage situations slightly differently now, and a lot of it is management with it throughout the game. Things that you might not see happen at a stoppage. You're just tipping a player off and you're engaging in conversation, but for me, there's still room for that. There is still room for it in the game to have a laugh with players, and you can have that relationship. It shouldn't be. But one thing I don't like is the head teacher student type. It's just not me. That really, it's never has been. So I'd rather be much more approachable with players and try and understand their point of view as well. But ultimately, there's got to be a fine balance of we've got to make a decision, and that's the decision we move on. So, and that is, I think, touching on Billy Thompson, we're very much influenced by other referees that have come before us. I mentioned the fact that I was quite young when I came into the full-time group. The group was looked very differently then. It was, Ben Thaler was still there, James Child, Robert Hicks, Phil Bentham was still around, Richard Silverwood had just left, and them referees that I'd very much seen kind of when I was coming through the pathway and learning off, so to speak, on games. Add your Steve Gansons and your Ashley Kleins into that. You kind of mould your own style as a referee, and you pick the things that you like off them, and things that you do differently. And I think that's, again, I always compare it to players. You pick the things you personally like for your personality. So that's how I found it. But in answer to your question, I think there's still room for that, but it is difficult when you're wired up.
You mentioned some of those names then. Of course, that leads us into another area that there seems to be a drift away at the moment of people at the top of the rugby league pyramid, mainly the coach, referee educators. We've lost Steve Ganson at the moment, hopefully temporarily. Phil Bentham's retired. Richard Silverwood clearly obviously monitors what's happening, but is outside of that sphere at the moment. We had Thierry Alibert as another one who was quite influential, even though he had the ability to perhaps polarize fans in some respects. What actually is happening in the referees department? Should we be worried that people are walking away from it? Should we be reevaluating what a full-time role actually means, what it costs, and what value we get out of it?
I think the first point is everything with sport, things move on and people move on. So nothing within professional sport is ever the same for really a long period of time. We've got plenty of examples that show that within Super League clubs, so to speak, or even below that. So we shouldn't be adverse to change, in my view. The thing I would say with that is that refereeing and elite refereeing, it is a very difficult role, and it is difficult to be. And I have full respect for people who have managed to got the endurance to do it for a long period of time that we've seen in recent years. You like to Ben Failer, who's be 400 Super League games this year, which is unbelievable, really, 15 years. And even with Phil Bentham as well, the kind of the career he's had, it is a very difficult position, and that transition from being a referee to a coach, I think, is even more difficult, because no doubt you've interviewed people who've said, I've listened to the podcast myself, who've found that when they retired as a player, it was they found it difficult to transition either to normal life or a coaching role or director of rugby, whatever it may be. And that's no different for refereeing. I would say support's an important one around refereeing, because I suppose what the refereeing, you never know when your last game's going to be. That's another element to it as well. So the more we can do to support referees in the full-time role now, the better it is. I'd say that the growth of the game, my view is we need full-time referees, because the game is so quick now. The game is so technical. So suddenly, just to give you an insight, my trainer's a solicitor, and it'd be very difficult for me now to go back into a legal route, work 9 till 5 long days, and then to expect me to go and perform to such a high standard on Hull Derby on Friday night live on Sky after working a full day. That's a big ask. So from my view, if you want top elite performances, the same as what you're expecting from the players, you need full-time refereeing.
He's done well, hasn't he, Ben? To say he's refereed that many games and still kept his tan, I don't know how he does it when he's so busy. How competitive are you as a group of match officials? Because obviously there's big games at the end of every season. There's a World Cup coming up. How competitive are you as a group to get those big games? Or are you all supportive of each other?
Oh, no, I'd say it's a healthy competition. And I think competition is important because, like you pointed out then, we all want the big games. We all want to referee the Challenge Cup finals. We all want to referee the grand finals. And you know what, there's some disappointment there as well when you don't get the games you want. But, you absolutely over the world when you do get the cup final appointments or the grand final appointments. Last year it was me and Chris. I experienced it both ways. It was Chris Kendall. I got the nod for the cup final, and Chris got the nod for the grand final. But what that achieved was Chris was reserved for me at the cup final. I was reserved for him as the grand final. And the first people who texted me after I got the cup final was Chris, and the first person I had text Chris when he got the grand final was me. So it's a healthy competition, but you've got to do, when you don't get the nod, you've got to do what you can to support your mate as well, because they've got to go out and go and deliver a great performance. And we've seen there's such a high amount of pressure on the big major games, is that it's so crucial that we turn up and deliver and everybody's prepared. So coming back to it, there's lots of competition between the group, but that's massively important.
I want to talk about VAR in a bit, but we need to talk about bringing more people into the game, into the world of refereeing. I used to do it in a different sport, and I can't work out why I did it now, looking back. What made you get involved in refereeing, and how can we get more young people involved and being in the most important role in the game?
How did I get involved? Honestly, complete accident. I had no intention whatsoever of being a referee. Finished with, like I said, I played a little bit and basically thought, you know what, I'll give it a go with the intention. Well, I'll earn a little bit of pocket money and just see if I like it. Went into suddenly being, the more I did it, I just thought, I like this, like getting it in the middle, enjoyed it, and just suddenly over the years it developed into a career option. Like I said, I spoke on before, I was doing a law degree as well, so that kind of went alongside it, and then to get the choice to go full time was brilliant for me. I think I'd set to new referees or anybody who's listening to this thinking about doing it would be just to give it a go. Over the last few weeks, I mentioned that we've had to adapt, and that includes our recruitment as well. So this season, we've not been able to hold our classroom-based recruitment courses, but we've been able to do it virtually. And it's great to see at the weekend just gone at the Huddersfield course, we had 50 people on the virtual course. And by the end of this month, the first block of 5, we'll have 150 newly qualified officials. The challenge with that will always be getting them newly qualified officials out into the societies and out onto the field, which isn't easy. So, we've had a good start this year, and virtual Zoom meetings like this have worked for us, but there's no denying it. Referee retention is an issue in all sports. So we need to seriously look at that and keep driving it forward.
You mentioned pinnacle of the game as well, which is as important for an aspirant as it is to somebody like yourself. And that's clearly the World Cup, which, touch wood, coming up as scheduled at the end of the year. You're on the initial panel of referees. How exciting is that for you? And I would imagine if we operate on a neutral system, which we should have, it will give you the experience of maybe refereeing teams and players and styles you've never come across before. And how important is it, and it's the perennial elephant in the room, that we do get to one set of rules that you can all operate on just on a weekly basis, so that when we do come together for these major tournaments, there's no doubt about what we're operating under?
Yeah, the first part of it was on the World Cup in year. I was at the 2017 World Cup, which was unbelievable in Australia. I was flying around Australia. That was a massive, unbelievable experience. But there's something special about being actually in your own country. The final at Old Trafford, the venues that've been confirmed are just unbelievable, really. So, and to be on the initial panel of the elite international refs, and like you said, to be on them games. The aim to be on Australia, New Zealand, them type fixtures, and the real kind of top tier nations, it is massive for us as referees as it is for players. So that will be special. And in answering to your second part is, I think we're slowly getting there this year. Actually, if you look at, we touched on the NRL before, but the NRL interpretations, apart from maybe one or two, we adopted most of them. So we are starting to get there with a universal set of laws. Yeah, they'll look slightly different. I know the NRL have got the captain's challenge, but that's different. Well, we can't do that because obviously all our games aren't on TV. So that is a challenge. But actually, I think we've made some progress this year. And come the World Cup, when it's starting October, we should get to a point where at least people from both sides of the world are familiar with the set of laws we're playing under.
That'll be handy. It's only something that we've been dreaming of since the very beginning of time. And again, just looking at sort of goal setting, every player has ambitions. We've seen colleagues of yours like Ashley has obviously played it. They're refereed in both competitions. Russell Smith, Tim Roby, probably the latest one. Should we expect a top full-time professional referee to have ambitions to go to the NRL, or do you not even consider something like that?
I wouldn't say never, to be honest. I think that's my view is kind of you've kind of gone through the system over here and you want to do the top games. So you've done maybe one final and you just want to do the next one. So, I'm still relatively young in refereeing years, 25. So certainly in the years to come, if that opportunity came up to go to the NRL, that's definitely something I'd consider. I'm the same as you guys. I watch the games that are on Sky in the morning, Thursday and Friday mornings. I get up and watch them. So the competition's great. So for referees, definitely Russell, you mentioned, who did it. Ashley did it more recently. So if the opportunity ever arose, definitely that'd be something that they definitely have to consider.
Let me throw this one at you then. If you could change any law of the game or adapt to any law of the game, what would you change to make life better for players and officials?
Good question, that. There's probably a few that stand out in terms of the one I'd say maybe around the free play a few years ago when we had that. I thought that was really hard work, where teams were kicking it downfield, and we actually changed that, so we got to a better position where it's easy. I think it's easier for us now. I'm maybe a bit old school, really, but I do like the shoulder charge. I remember the clips when I was kind of grew up and remembering the players who doing the big hits. So I was probably a little bit sentimental around that. So I'd potentially bring that back if it was me, but I'm not that fussed either way. But from a sentimental view of when I first started watching rugby league, it was always about them big hits and real traditional players that were going in with the shoulder. So possibly that, but I'm not really that fussed either way, if I'm honest.
We know when the season gets underway in a few weeks' time, we'll know if Rod Studd's feeling better if he starts criticising the way the video referee works in rugby league. You must look at some of the. I know football's massive, and you can't compare the two sports, but the utter mess that VAR has become. What have they done so wrong that we've got right? If that's a word.
I think sometimes, and you two will know this as well, sometimes when you're in the rugby league bubble, we can almost think that everything's wrong and only see inwards rather than outwards. And actually, I'm a football fan as well, so I watch the football. And it's something that we did when we was Super League, the first video referee, 1990, whatever it was, the first game. We've almost been pioneers, I think, in video technology, in officiating. And we've seen the last 12 months or so football about to follow that and have maybe starting to learn a lot of the lessons that we learned over 20 years ago. So, we've got a system now that I think's evolved over time. We've had some hard lessons as well. No doubt we've got things wrong and there's still things that we can get things right. But I think certainly most people watching the game, certainly after the Challenge Cup games, for example, the feedback I have from sometimes who maybe some of my friends who aren't massive rugby league fans, who are football fans, who said, how good is the video ref that you have in rugby league where you can hear him speak, talking through decisions, and you see the replays, and they was comparing the two between football and rugby league. So that I think the view is that our system is a lot more advanced than that. I know football can get there. Learn some lessons from this year. It's football refereeing like rugby. It's difficult. So I think over time they'll get better. And there's certainly things that we can get better at, but I think certainly for now we're in a decent spot with it.
I was going to say, in terms of laws that need to be changed, it's the charge down law. That's what you meant to say. That's a skill. If somebody charges down the ball, it isn't 6 again. It's just play on. So if you could just institute that would solve one of my bugbears. Talking of the video referee, I think it's important again to explain to perhaps people don't realise how the process works, that some of this is dependent upon a television director. Because I think one of the criticisms we've had of our system is sometimes it takes too long when it seems obvious. It's not always you in the video booth that's asking for the extra angles or wanting double clarification. Do you get unfairly criticised, do you think, for the length of time it takes to come to a decision when you've already gone, that's pretty obvious, it's not a try?
Yeah, I think there's, I think it's, people have a perception almost that we're sat in a booth somewhere and we have two buttons, no try and try. It's very much like that. You're on your own, really, so to speak, and you're being played basically the TV footage by the director, whether that be Sky or BBC, and you're watching the game, the same footage that what you're watching at home. So, and we've got to make a decision. Sometimes it takes a bit more time to get the right angle that you want. If you can see that there's one particular angle that might be better and show you a better view of the ball, the touchline, it takes a bit of time for the director to produce that angle. But generally speaking, certainly with Sky and BBC, they work very well with us, and they will work. But you've seen the decisions yourself. Sometimes it can be literally, a frame that decides the outcome of a decision. So I know if I was a fan of the game, which I am, I'd rather the video referee take that little bit extra time to get the right decision than maybe rush it, and then you could have got a better angle that proves it was wrong or the decision could have been better.
And when you're on field and you're referring up to the video referee, would you prefer not to have to give a decision? We've done it both ways. There's flaws in each of them. Sometimes if you genuinely haven't seen what's happened, which is why you're going up to the video ref in the first place, you have to make a decision that has to be overturned. Is there a better way of doing it? Would you prefer to just go up and say, look, guy in the stand, you decide?
I think there's like you said, that there's problems with it. There's no perfect scenario to this. Whatever you do, you'll find a scenario that doesn't quite fit. And all I say is when you're refereeing and you're on the game, probably 90% of the time, you have a gut feeling of what it is, whether that be no try or try, knock on, lost, whatever it may be, ball steal. You do have a gut feeling. So I have no real issue with going up with a live call and then having the system of the video referee either confirming or overturning you. there can be examples where that maybe that doesn't fit if there's insufficient evidence or the footage isn't the best. But I think fans can accept more at least if it comes back to the on-field referee's original view. Where before there was, people, if you went to the old system, you'd say fans will say, how can you give that benefit of the doubt when you can't even see the ball? And so there's problems with both systems. But for me personally, I think to change it again would just create even more drama, which we don't need. I think fans and media experts like yourselves have began to accept now that that's the way we do it.
We accept nothing. Certainly not being expert. Just got a final couple of questions from me, at least. In terms of, you say you can't please everyone. When, after a game, coaches in their press conferences, they're obviously still high on adrenaline after a match. They're not happy with the decision another match official has made. Would you like the opportunity to come out and explain why, or do you think that would just cause more trouble than it's worth?
I think straight after the game, I don't think there's a place for that really. I think it just adds fuel to the fire sometimes. I think there's very much a conversation to be had. So if that meant I'd have no objections to speaking to a club coach once you've reviewed the game and you've seen it back and you made an incident. I'd have no issue speaking to a coach or a team and going through and saying, sometimes either I've got this one right, this is my rationale for why I think this decision's right, or holding your hand up and saying, you know what, I've just seen that one wrong. I'm not kind of shy to walk away when if I think I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I think that's how you learn. So certainly open to that, but to put yourself in front of a Sky camera straight after the game when you've not actually seen the footage, the fan or the spectator watching might have seen it, but you've not had opportunity to see that back. So for me, maybe there is a place for it, but that can be done very much in private with a club coach.
And the last one from me then, for any budding match officials, how would they get involved and what would be your advice to them?
It would just be is that I had absolutely no intention of being a referee. And if you'd told me when I was 16, 17 that when I'm 25 I'll referee a Challenge Cup final at Wembley, I just wouldn't have believed you. Absolutely no chance. So whoever that may be, just give it a go. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. There's no pressure to carry on and give it I said that to players now who maybe have asked me about it in the past. Well, if you don't like it, you don't like it. And even for players who might be listening to this thinking, you know what, I might just want to improve my knowledge of the laws a little bit and just think maybe have a better understanding of the laws of the game, and that might improve your game. Why not give it a go? Especially with these virtual courses now, it's probably a few hours out of your day and you're a qualified referee. So I don't see a negative side to it really, if I'm honest. And obviously from my experience it's not just what you do on the field. The buzz of adrenaline refereeing a big game is huge. But it's not only that, it's the experience. I've been to Australia, I've done Challenge Cup finals, into big internationals. The friends and people you meet within Rugby League, within the top level of the game, it is something that we don't really speak about enough. And obviously, being invited to speak on Forty20 podcast is up there as a big highlight.
I think that phrase is buttering our parsnips. And you're very kind, but we're not going to take that seriously. Just a final one from me. I mean, obviously, you're extremely personable. You go out of your way to be helpful whenever a question's asked. Something like this, I think, is a really valuable forum for fans to see that you've got personalities. You're not automatons. James Child and the interviews he's given over the last week or so have been really captivating. Not so much even about what he was talking about, but the fact that he was talking in such a measured and rational way about things that people can say, actually, respect is earned. Therefore, you need to have more of a public persona, if you like. Do you think we should learn more about who you are as people, and then we would understand and appreciate the job that you do?
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's a fair point. I think that's come across the last few months. The always point I always come back to: we are human. We're referees, but we are human. And actually, the club visits I've done the last few weeks, you speak to players on an informal way, and you just actually speak to them as lads more than anything else, and as people. And there's a lot that can be said for that. So the more you can see us as as not just being a referee and almost somebody who's no feelings or no kind of anything to do with the game, and we are actually just people. The better, the more opportunities we can do that, the better. And hopefully stuff like this, it just furthers that.
Well, obviously, Liam, you're now our favourite match official in Rugby League because you listen to the podcast, or at least say you do, which is all we ever want. So thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Good luck for the season. We say it to all the players and coaches, but hopefully a mistake-free season, and you get the big games that you want at the end of it.
Cheers. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Phil.
I'll throw a random one at you, Adam, then. Former Outward Grange pupil. I see it on Wikipedia. You're probably the most successful person to have gone there. What careers advice... Well, certainly not me, but what careers advice did they give you back then when you were thinking about what to do after school?
Well, I'm quite fortunate because my mum actually worked at the school at the time, so she was very big on my education. I was one of them kids who just loved playing sport no matter what it was. Football, cricket, basketball, you name it, I was playing it. And I was getting sort of dragged out of school lessons. Come on, ads, you need to play for cricket team. And I was like, oh, all right, I'll just leave, my maths English class, and I'd be on minibus and I'd be playing. I was that sort of kid, but at the same time, it was, my mum kept me grounded at school, and she made me, do the extra lessons that I was missing out on, and she kept me at school she kept me 2 years after that at college, so I got my A levels, and then it literally as I finished my A levels at Outward that week I got the call up for my debut, so. Just great. Outward were great, and like I say, just as a kid, all I wanted to do was play sport, and luckily enough, I was good enough to play rugby at professional level.
And I guess that's the advice you give to kids who are we're in your situation now. Stay at school, get as much education as you can alongside your sporting career.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, even now, I'm still looking to do courses and still try to educate myself, and because rugby careers can be short. I'm so fortunate that I've managed to have 10, 11 years playing rugby, but you see a lot of people who might even be in the game 1 or 2 years, and it's so important to have a backup plan, and especially as a young kid that you either get some education or qualifications that you can fall back on, or you can move on to once your career's finished.
Obviously, you've gone on and you've become an England international. We've got a World Cup this year, but when you signed that first contract, what were your initial ambitions for your rugby league career?
Yeah, good question. At the time, probably starting, I'd never in years what I thought that I'd make 10 years at Cass. Never in a million years, no. I signed at Cass for a couple of reasons. One of them that I saw myself fitting in the first team pretty soon. Ryan Hudson was the hooker at the time, and then Kirk Neverton. I thought I could, in a couple of years' time, I could get the better of them. Ryan Hudson coming towards the back end of his career, and I thought, I can really compete for that number 9 spot. So, yeah, and then it was just from there. Obviously got my debut at 18, and once you get in the first team setup, and once you start playing the games, the sure do come pretty thick and fast. And yeah, it's just been season after season, and like there's not really been much stopping really to really reflect until this year, I guess. And like I say, I have done quite a lot of reflecting, and it's good to just take your head and self out of the game and look back at what you've really achieved.
And obviously, final one from me, just success with Castleford, obviously important this year, but that World Cup at the end of the year must be a big carrot at the end of the stick, so to speak.
Yeah, again, if you ask all the English players in Super League, I bet they'd give you the same answer, that the reason that they ultimately they want to get the England call up at the end of the year. I had a taste of international football, obviously, in 2018, and I remember at the time saying, I've had a taste of it, and I want more of it. And the hunger and desire still remains in me that I want to, get back to that level. I believe that, I've put all the hard work in this pre-season, and I'm sure I'm going to be challenging, to get myself to them highs again.
So we spoke to Liam Moore, and you will also seen Adam Milner there, because I recorded it last week, and I may as well put it in because not many people have watched it, and it bumps up the content of the programme. But he's got his testimonial coming up, and testimonials are a feature of the OuRLeague app, which people have got very upset about. Why do people get upset, Phil, about things which, if you apply a little bit of logic, you can work out the reasons for most things? Not everything's rugby league, but some things.
No, and the other thing I don't understand is that there is clearly an assumption amongst some people that those who run rugby league are stupid, and I can confirm that they're absolutely not, and that if there was a deal to be done, and there was a way of putting out more of the games to more of the people for more money, believe me, they would have done it. They are hamstrung by the terms of a contract. And whether that's right or wrong, that contract is coming to an end. And when it's renegotiated, at the time when it was negotiated, it's 2014.
What's coronavirus?
Well, what was streaming? We knew that there was something coming along where there may be a different way of watching a game. But if you had a major broadcaster that was going to give you £40 million a year and said, well, we want to preserve our assets by owning all of it, you'd have been stupid not to have signed up to that. By the same way, you're hardly likely to turn around in the last year of a negotiation and go, give us all those games for nothing, because you're not going to show them. No, you can have them, but you're going to have to pay for them. And if you're going to have to pay for them, then whatever money you make on them, you're not going to see anyway. So please don't assume that the likes of those running the game haven't thought of all this, haven't tried to find a way around all this, and have done the best job they can in getting games shown on OuRLeague and helping out the coffers of the home clubs whose season ticket holders will get something for the money that they've left in the clubs. And yes, of course, in an ideal world, if every game was pay-per-view, it would be great, but it can't be because of the terms of the conditions of the contract. So, it is what it is for this final year. It'll change with the next TV deal. And the corollary of that will be there'll be less money from Sky as a result. So you have to balance it up, and let's be sensible about it. We're getting the best we can hope to get in the situation that we're currently in.
That's why I can understand supporters not realising the ins and outs of deals and such, but people in our industry, you think you must have an idea. The RFL and Super League cannot come out and say Sky won't let us, because why would you do that when you're negotiating with them anyway? I mean, we don't know 100% that that's the reason, but we can assume it's the reason because it makes sense. Yeah,
it's not that they won't let them. It's why should Sky give up an asset that they've paid for without, potentially turning round and saying, it's fine, you can have the other 4 games, but then either we won't pay you £40 million a year, or you pay us for each of those games that you broadcast. Now, if there is no leeway to do either of those things, that's why we are where we are. There has to be an understanding of that.
I'd like to think on this programme, our criticisms are always fair, and they may not always be well received, but I think they're fair. And I think some of the criticisms here are unfair. Now, I could come on here and criticise some of the choices of people they're using on the broadcast. I'm not going to, because I'm, vaguely professional. But, you can read between the lines and work out who I think should work and shouldn't work, and, who's good and who's not. But that's not my decision to make. Would I be happy paying money to hear some people commentate on games? No. And I'm not paying for any games now, because I don't. Why am I going to pay to watch Leeds and Huddersfield on Sunday? And I like Matt. I'm not criticising Matt, by the way. He's one of my mates. But, I'm not going to pay a £5 or a £10 to watch a game I've got no interest in, when I can watch the NRL games that I've already paid for on Sky, and I can watch Fever streaming their game for free, which is an interesting decision. I wonder why they've gone down that route and not charging as other clubs are. I think they're the only ones not to charge.
I suspect in pre-season that is the best thing to do. The chances are there would have been no income coming in for that game anyway. anyway. So just broaden your brand. I think that there are changes afoot in how we will consume live games in the future. And the start of that process is the building up of the OuRLeague platform. And it may well be that in the same way that people are paying, what is it, 120 quid to watch NRL outside of Australia, because again, it's a different market. We may have a similar type of electronic season ticket model over here in the future. And then people will complain why they're being asked to subscribe to Sky and subscribe to OuRLeague. But it is going to move along that direction, and we should get used to it. And again, I was discussing this with somebody this week. There's been some criticism about even $4.95, but if you went to the game, you'd be paying 20 quid. So why wouldn't you pay $4.90? If you're getting relatively decent production standards, which I think we can assume that they are. Then you can complain if you like that there aren't as many replays or cameras or video refereeing decisions. You can complain that you don't like the commentator and the summariser, but it's $4.95. It's not 20 quid on match day if you decide to go and watch a game where you get none of that intermediary stuff. So there are interviews that I saw both of the coaches interviewed before the Hull York game. That felt like an occasion, and for a $5, even if you don't support either of those teams, it seemed like a worthwhile investment. So there'll be some games you want to see, there'll be some that you don't, there'll be some that you're not allowed to, that you'll be frustrated about, there'll be some that you'll have access to as a season ticket holder, so for free. So it's the best balance that they could come up with, and hats off to them for the schedule that they brought out. I think the other issue that we probably need to talk about that ties into all of this is, what do we do with the French teams? On the one hand, we're really encouraged by the fact that Catalan's games may well now be back on BN. It may well be that if supporters aren't allowed to go to the Dragons, that they'll be able to see all the games because they'll be on Sky like they were until last season. But then we've got the issue with Toulouse that, how many games are they going to be able to play this year? And how does that affect the veracity of that league table at the end of the season?
Well, it comes back to, Mark's made this point on the programme plenty of times. We've all made the point about, you've got the second tier has a mix of professional teams and semi-professional teams, but we almost need to say you're either one or the other. You can't have both in the same division because of situations like this where team and look, no one knew what was going to happen. No one knew 24 months ago what was going to happen. So we're not criticising the RFL or Toulouse or Super League or whoever, because no one knew what was going to happen. But now you've got a situation where, how many teams can Toulouse play at the current moment in time? A handful, less than half the division.
Yeah, there's something else, I think, that, it was a very detailed press release that had a lot of elements to it. But it struck me that if you were a full-time team going to France, you still had to have 5 days of quarantine. Now, nobody said that about the Super League teams going to the Dragons. So it's only, I think the first team there is Salford and the second team is Warrington. Do all of those players have to quarantine when they come back for 5 days? Because how does that affect their next fixture? I'm not sure I fully understand all the implications of that, and no doubt people are tapping their keyboards as they listen to this going, "You stupid man, you've completely misinterpreted the instructions." But it seemed to me that one of the reasons London were playing in Toulouse and everybody else wasn't was because there was a dispensation that they were full-time, but they still had restrictions placed upon them. So, we have to work all of this into a really, really difficult scenario for those at the top of the game to manage fairly, and that includes broadcasting, it includes fixture provision, it includes scheduling. We need to have some patience. We've gone a calendar year without a fan being in a ground, and we're already dictating to the game exactly what should and shouldn't happen, and life doesn't work like that.
We don't know where London are playing yet at home, let alone when they're playing away.
Well, we might know at the end of March on the 29th. I think the trustees of Wimbledon We'll discuss the proposal that London have said we would like to come and be a part of what you're doing, and if the trustees agree and accept it, then I think London will move there. But clearly they can't do anything until those trustees have met. And again, if they were in a position to announce their home ground earlier and put season tickets on sale and reap the reward of a new venue, I'm sure they would have done that. And we assume that they're not doing it because they're not thought of it. I would imagine they've thought of nothing else and trying to bring it to fruition.
I don't understand the issue for a football club with a stadium who wouldn't want it used throughout the summer. But
Exactly.
But I have various things about the Wimbledon thing, which are just not for this podcast, and anyway. So we've covered our league and people moaning about things which there's no point in moaning about. Oh, by the way, on Featherstone's coverage, because I have worked with I want to call him the person behind everything, because he does the cameras, the graphics, everything, the streaming. They won't be the cost of Featherstone's operation won't be the cost of a usual OuRLeague game. That doesn't mean that the quality's worse or whatever, because it's not. Because if you've seen the streams of some of the Wakefield women's games from the before times, you'll see they are perfectly adequate and perfectly fine. But they obviously have a smaller cost, and obviously can cover that and still provide the games for free. Maybe they think that their exposure to sponsors for free.
Absolutely.
I think they said they had 1,500 at most concurrent viewers, which is not bad for a pre-season friendly, which, judging by the scoreline, was all over after the first 20 minutes or whatever. That's not bad.
I think the other thing is you mentioned sponsors, and they need some value for putting money into the team. And even if they're hitting 1,500 potential people that will go out and buy their product, Featherstone are doing them a service. So it works for everybody. And I just think we're going to see how this pans out. We're in the last year of a major deal. There will be change. Just hold on there, have some patience. There are things like radio stations where you can listen to games if there isn't visual coverage of them, and it's safe to say that some of the I love audio coverage. A really good radio commentary to me is even better than a television one, because you use your imagination to visualize what's happening, and sometimes when you're watching it on the telly, it's almost as if you're being told what's happening. You don't bring anything to that experience, and brilliant radio commentary I don't think can be beaten. So there is, I don't think there'll be a game that doesn't have some form of coverage. And I listened to an Australian game this morning on ABC and absolutely loved it. I've really felt part of an experience, and clearly the wrong team won that game, but listening to it 12,000 miles away was just fabulous.
It's not hard for a commentator to remain neutral either, if they want to. And that's part of the professionalism of the job.
Yeah, and to convey excitement, the controversy and drama, and the best ones are magnificent at doing that.
So Super League back in a couple of weeks. I've missed like our annual pep talk with Ralph on the stage doing some gags and stuff. I've missed it. I know he did the thing on the OuRLeague app the other day. I've not watched it in full yet, but it's not the same as having him there doing some jokes to an audience of people who've been dragged there by their clubs to speak to people they don't want to speak to. It's just not the same. I'm missing that kind of thing.
No, media days are a thing of the past. It's all in on Zoom. Get what you can, and we'll all report the same sort of thing.
Hey, speaking of which, and that's perfect timing. Let's hear now from the Sheffield Eagles, who I caught up with last week.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a strange one, isn't it? Training's been a bit different, but we've had a real tough month through February. We was in 4 days a week, which we probably needed, because although it's been a longer pre-season, we was only in 2 days a week at some point. So it's just something that you're going to have to get your head around. And we all know that we've got a job to do, and it is our job. We're professionals, and that's what we're just going to have to crack on and get on with. Yeah, do you know what? It's the longest layoff, obviously, a lot of us have had, I've ever had, since I've been, well, since amateur days even. But you can do all the fitness and running you want and all the gym work you want, but you'll never be ready for that, first game. I don't know how the forwards do it. The middlemen are unbelievable, the amount of work that they get through. But I don't know. You need game time. Obviously, as you get a bit older, you get a bit more conditioned to it, but it's going to be real tough them first few weeks.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm feeling, considering the length of time I've been out, I'm feeling quite good. Like Thax says, it's been a bit of a grueler for, especially the forwards. We kind of split into forwards and backs for training throughout pre-season, and lucky us, Tubby takes the forwards, so we've not had many easy training nights, which is, in the long run, it's going to be really good for us, because he likes to say he's be cruel to be kind kind of thing what he's done. So I do understand his logic in it. It's getting our bodies ready after being out for so long without any rugby league. You do need to get that muscle memory and all that stuff kind of in the right place. So yeah, I've enjoyed it. It's been tough. We've still got a couple of weeks to go, but I feel like most players are ready to roll. Exactly, yeah. Me and Tubby had this conversation literally the other day. It's what I don't want to be sat on sidelines thinking, oh, am I all right? Am I not all right? Because that's when it starts playing on your mind. It's been a tough enough job mentally, getting over it and getting back into full training. I just think now that one last step is just to get out there and, like you say, go 100 miles an hour and just treat it like I'm just as likely to get injured as anybody else, which is true. So yeah. Oh, it's been massive for me. I came to Sheffield from Featherstone a few years ago. We had a bit of a turbulent season. That first season I signed, quite a few players left, and we were left with quite a young, inexperienced group. And I was one of the elder players at that time, and Tubby gave me the armband, and it were a huge honour for me, and to be able to captain a side of the stature of Sheffield Eagles, it's something that anyone would be proud of. As I say, as long as I've got it in the old bones, I hope to carry on and just keep giving it my all until time's time, innit? It obviously comes and gets us all.
Are you asking for a contract as well, another extension?
Yeah.
Is that both of us contract extensions on this thing tonight?
Yeah, it's huge, mate. It's massive for me to be skipper.
Oh, I've got a lot of time for these two guys. That's why they're at the club, and I put a lot of onus on developing this club and the players around it, and they're both good blokes, and that's the big thing with me, is it's about the culture, and as Matty touched on there, we've had a couple of tough years where probably the culture hasn't been where we'd want it to be, but it's certainly come back, and I think that we had a tough start to 2020, but we could see the light at the end of the tunnel. The club's in a good place. I've got to say, throughout this period, which has been tough for everybody, the staff and everybody involved with the club have handled it marvellously, and we've come through it. And yeah, we've had a tough month this last month. We've been in 4 days a week, but it's all about getting the bodies ready, because we know what's coming in 2 weeks. And there's no substitute for that physical contact, flat out, 100 mile an hour for as long as you can get. So we've prepared them. We can only prepare them the best that we can do, and they've got to get out there now. But yeah, there's certainly guys that, both of them believe they've got another 10 years in them. Whether they have or not, we'll debate at the end of 2000. Well, it's everything. It's the fans. It's the players. It's kids. It's people say, what is success? Well, we played at Wembley less than 2 years ago, and 4 kids that come through our system at Sheffield Eagles played at Wembley. Who gets that opportunity? So there's lots of reasons. We ain't got a massive fan base, but they've had it tougher than anybody else, the last 7 years. So we owe it to them, we're indebted to them, and we want to fetch it home, we want to fetch the stadium and that. But, we talk about giving kids dreams. It's great about the senior guys, they've been there, seen it, done it, and we want to give them the fitting ending to their career in a successful environment. But it's about the next stage for Sheffield Eagles. It's about these kids and giving them the dream to be the best they can be. And that's what we've done. That's what we've done since 2000, when obviously we took over the club, and we'll always do that. We'll always do that. I'm not copying that you've got to be ready at 19, 20-year-old. If you're a good bloke, somebody gives you a chance, and I'm sure you can progress in this game. We've dreamed about having big games, haven't we? And we've always been, Bramall Lane over the last so many years has been, if there was a replay of the Challenge Cup, it we played at Bramall Lane and things like that, which never happens, does it? So to get a major game in the city is probably the first time ever. I've got to say, having played at Bramall Lane, it's a fantastic venue for Rugby League. You're really sat on top of the pitch, and the atmosphere is electric. So yeah, we need to get people, we need to relight the candle, if you like. We need to get people to understand that, hey, we're still going, we're still in Sheffield, we're coming back. There's the World Cup, which will obviously lead into the new stadium, and anybody who's going to be at the World Cup, we need to tap them in and get them back down to the club, because I played in the era when there were 4,000 or 5,000 people at Don Valley Stadium, so they're out there. We just need to get them back and give them the right facility, give them the right experience, and who knows where we can progress. But yeah, it's exciting times.
Sheffield or Doncaster, Sheffield. Well, they could have been one of the clubs when Super League started. Could have been South Yorkshire Sharks or something, but they weren't, thankfully, and both still exist. And we wish them well this season. And hopefully a big crowd at Bramall Lane.
Yeah, Mark Aston, one of the stalwart figures of the sport as well.
I was asking there, why does he still do it? Every obstacle has been put in their place over the past 20 years now, but they're still there. They're still going.
Man of absolute passion for the sport and that particular club, and hopefully now work is starting on the new DV stadium, and in years to come they'll look back and go, this was painful, but it was worth it. This is the legacy for South Yorkshire, alongside Doncaster, who again have got some stalwart people behind them.
Here's some facts from the Rugby League Annual 1994. Did you know London Crusaders, formerly Fulham, are not the first team to pioneer the game in the capital? London Highfield were launched in 1933 after previously playing as Wigan Highfield. They're also the first team to play regularly under floodlights. How long did they last in London Highfield?
2 years. But then we had Acton and Willesden and Streatham and Mitcham.
Blackpool Borough once signed a Salford player and paid his balance of his transfer fee in Morecambe Bay prawns, which is, I think, still their club record fee. A British amateur player was sent off during a tour match in Western Samoa. He was ordered by the local disciplinary body to pay the customary fine, a pig. Satellite broadcasting company B Sky B, which I always love when people still call them that, are paying more than £3 million for their exclusive coverage of the Stonesborough Championship and Premiership until 1995. So there you go. There's some good news for you. £3 million.
Excellent. Well
Imagine
done.
What we could do with that. Could have done the toilets at Bellevue. Oh.
Mobile rocket, I believe.
The mobile rocket it is now. Yeah. We're ready. I think we're ready now, aren't we? There's a bit over the winter where it's a bit meh, but pre-season games have started. NRL's back on. I'm ready to see the proper stuff now.
I think, again, contractually obliged to mention it at least once in each segment of this broadcast. The new 4020 magazine out now.
So.
with a lovely illustration of the jungle with people in it, just to bring back that sense of we're not far away from people coming back to ground. Complete with new columnist John Wilkin, if you haven't heard.
Yes.
We've had to do the predictions this month, and again, it's when you start actually thinking we're putting it out there where we think clubs will finish. You get that sense of excitement that we're actually talking about real competition. And you haven't been able to do it until a couple of months later than you would normally have done it. You're opening yourself up to everybody, quite rightly saying you have no idea what you're talking about. But just being able to think about where teams may finish, top, middle, or bottom, in both the Championship and Super League, and we'll do League One as it gets nearer to their kick-off. Yes, the sense of really looking forward to something is back. Don't read too much into the pre-season results. Don't read too much into the round 1 or 2 results. It's a long, hard season. It's going to test every squad to its absolute limit. Injuries are going to be an issue. We've already heard that Salford and Castleford have got that this weekend with their pre-season games. But read a magazine for another couple of weeks and then enjoy the fair.
Yeah, people who read too much into results in pre-season, I despair. But we've got to pretend that these games are important.
Well, they're important that they are games. They're being played, and we're having a look at probably debutants and have styles of play changed. But when you get 57 rolling substitutions, don't read too much into it. Great to see York's new stadium formally opened as well.
It's not the first game that's played there, because that'll be the first official game. And anyone who played last night did not make their debut because they're not official. They're not actual matches.
No.
Otherwise, we're back to Scully's golden cap. And you'd have people. Otherwise, Johnny Vegas would have the heritage number at St Helens.
Good point.
And he doesn't, does he? I don't think. Unless they, because then it would open up all kinds of floodgates and everything would be. It's not as much as a mess it is now. They've reclassified all these international games and such. But do the Exiles count as an international team?
No.
Is everyone going to release their players, or is it going to be, people from League One playing? Gavin Henson's going to be playing and Rangy Chase?
It's going to be difficult to release players when there are games on that weekend, but that was always a potential obstacle. But again, this is the other argument I find really odd, that there has to be an economic aspect to the number of games that we're playing. And when you think that every club relied on the largesse of its season to get holders to leave money in the club when they could have asked for it back, they couldn't have gone any less than 25 matches this year. Just from an economic point, and it's nothing to do with harming England's chances in the World Cup. It's the reality. And that's why clubs are going to have to rotate their players. They're going to have to bring a lot more youngsters in. Why we've got 3 double weekends. It's not just because we want to exhaust the players and harm England's chances of winning a World Cup. It's the economic reality of where these clubs are in 2021, having barely played with any income coming in 2020. So I can see that argument again from both sides. The Exiles was always going to be a chance for Sean Wayne to get his players together in a game situation. And we can always think of alternatives to who they should have played. Trent Robinson wouldn't have come over to coach the French mid-season. He's there for the World Cup. And going forward, hopefully, there will be opportunities to bring the French into a regular mid-season international window in years where we're not trying to recover from the effects of coronavirus. And yes, there is a possibility at some point maybe to have a combined Celtic nations rather than a combined Exiles team. But for this year, for the expediency of what's needed, that's what Sean Wayne wanted, and that's why we've got it.
Cumbria. Play Cumbria. As long as the Exiles take it seriously, it's not a bit like the Barbarians where it's just a knockabout.
Tommy
completely pointless, isn't it?
Tommy Luluai's come out and said it's serious. I think there are some Exiles players that perhaps won't see the value of it. It's going to be very interesting to see what they're paid to participate, because again, there has to be something in it for them financially. I think it's going to be really interesting to see whether clubs back players up over that Exiles weekend, the same way that has happened in State of Origin. or whether we just spread our resources a little bit more thinly. But that's the best we could have hoped for, in the same way that the OuRLeague deal is the best we could have hoped for. We're hamstrung by so many other things. An international game on a Friday night, which again isn't part of a current broadcast deal, so there may be a few quid into the coffers because of it. You can see why it's got to happen.
I did like how the esteemed 4020 correspondent George Clark found the job application for was it the Exiles manager on the RFL's website?
Yeah, and I think was it somebody pointed out that Phil Bentham's role had been advertised before it was officially announced that he wasn't doing the role that was being advertised.
It's like broadcasting, that being replaced before you've left your job, or football management. Give Lauren Fresno the job. He's not doing anything this year. He's an exile. He's foreign. Speaks English. I've interviewed him.
Chris Wilder. He's free. He could do it.
Shocker, that one. But that's football.
We think we've got problems.
I know. I should have had some Blades gear on, but never mind. I mean, they can't break the record for the lowest points total now, so you may as well sack him because he's lost his chance of making history. But that's football. At least we don't have VAR. As we spoke with Liam Moore earlier. At least it's not as bad as theirs.
I have to say, Liam was another great guest who wouldn't normally get on, offering a perspective on something that we don't analyse enough as fans of the game. And I think the referees and their inherent personalities is something that we need to promote more. I agree with him that having them on justifying a decision in the white heat of emotion straight after a game probably doesn't solve anything. But having them on in the build up to games, talking about their preparations, their sacrifices, just to tell us then that he ran 2K more between finishing and lockdown starting and the restart just because the rules had changed. How many of us could take that on board on our own, training at home, to get to that level of... We don't factor that in when we go, he missed a forward pass. Rubbish. As we said in the interview, we've got a piece in the magazine with, I think that's the third and final gratuitous plug, with Ben Thaler.
Straight and throughout down wherever it is, they'd be down in one of the corners.
But Ben Thaler and Robert Hicks, it tells some wonderful stories of Billy Thompson, the humanity of refereeing. I think James Child, as I mentioned twice already, listening to him on the Out of OuRLeague podcast, it was just a really, really engaging guest. And I think, again, Liam just showed that 25, looking what he's achieved in his life at the moment. I mean, that's something that we should be getting really right behind him on and not saying, I can't believe this, that back on.
But I still remember Robin Whitfield giving that try that wasn't over the line. I still remember that. Robbed were. I think we're going to lose that day anyway. Ball boying. I think we're done, aren't we? I think
we've covered everything.
Yeah, I think there was something else I was going to mention, and I can't for the life of me remember what it was. So it can't be anything important because if it was, it would pop into my brain. But no,
that is definitely a 3 o'clock in the morning. You'll be waking up bolt upright in the middle of the bed, going,
yeah. Well, someone asked me if I could do something last night, and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I thought of something to do with it, and I thought, It's nice to be busy doing things, even if it's not full time. It's nice to have a task rather. I tidied the house yesterday. I mean, what's that all about? I mean,
how much did you find that you thought you'd lost?
Well,
that's what I normally do. I normally go, I bought a replacement of those because I thought I'd lost it, and here it is after all.
I know our erstwhile colleague Mark Wilson had the same issue this week, but
he did.
But he found what he was looking for, just like what's his name? That fella, the Irish one.
Don't tidy up, folks, because you'll only lose stuff.
Yeah, that's the problem. At least I know, all my books are under there, under me thing. But well, we should say to people: go out and buy the magazine if you're allowed to go out. News agents are an essential service. Bookshops will be again soon.
Yeah, another month.
It's a month, isn't it, until everyone goes out, causes havoc, and then we're back in lockdown 4. So
you never know. We might even be able to get together on the set.
Wow.
Which has been mothballed. I have no idea what it looks like under there. There's probably biscuits from the last time. Something will have gone mouldy in that room, and that won't just be me.
No, we need some perspex screens like they have on Only Connecting things, so we can.
I do like the idea of Scoey in a mask. I was thinking more perhaps of a balaclava for him.
Just one without eye holes, just the wrong way around.
Yeah,
just as a mystery guest. Yeah. See, even Liam was asking where he was. That didn't make the cut, but because that was before we started recording, he's like, "Where's Scully? Where's Scully?" Everyone wants to know where he is.
He's in Belle Isle, recuperating.
There he is.
There he is,
showing all the vision and awareness that made him man of the match in Leeds versus Salford that I watched this morning from the Regal Trophy.
Right.
Valley Parade.
Valley Parade, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Wasn't the pitch half frozen that day?
Yes. Yeah. You can't beat Ray French, and I think he had Alex Murphy and John Money with him. It's like I had 1 million people in the commentary box who was like listening to Sky. Everything old is new again. Right, we're done. Phil, thank you very much.
It's good to catch up.
We will.
Thank you to our loyal listeners.
Yes, all of you. Still downloading the podcast, still watching on YouTube and Facebook, and we'll be back again at some point next week. I don't know what's happening next week. I've not lined up any guests, and Phil's face is frozen, which is perfect timing. But we'll have some kind of season preview at some point, although our predictions will be as useless as they always are. As Phil is frozen, I will say goodbye, or as they say in France, cheerio. The Skype broke, didn't it? So Phil's reminding me on text message that we should wish all of you who are celebrating a happy Mother's Day this week. Mother's very important in the world of Rugby League, bringing up all great Rugby League supporters. So happy Mother's Day to all the mothers, people who are mothers, people who act as mothers, and all those kind of things. And if you're without your mother this Mother's Day, we're thinking of you as well. We'll see you next time. I won't say week because I don't know when we'll be back. We'll see you next time on 4020 Not Live.